To understand cannabis prohibition in the United States, we must first recognize its importance as a legal and required crop for over 2 centuries. The story of its fall from a staple in medicine to a Schedule I narcotic is marked by two pivotal shifts. Cannabis, particularly in the form of hemp, fueled early American industry. In 1619, the Virginia Assembly mandated its cultivation, essential for rope, cloth, and paper production. Esteemed figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were among its cultivators. Throughout the 1800s, cannabis was entrenched in American pharmacies, prescribed for ailments ranging from headaches to childbirth pain, and included in the U.S. pharmacopoeia as a legitimate medicine. The first turning point between 1910 and 1937 was fueled by economic interests and racist ideologies. Post-Mexican Revolution, cannabis became linked with Mexican immigrants, prompting xenophobic and false media narratives of crime and violence, popularized under the Spanish term marijuana. Business figures like Harry Anslinger and William Randolph Hearst pushed for legislation against hemp to protect economic interests. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act effectively dismantled the hemp industry. The second shift occurred in 1970 with the Controlled Substances Act, a law categorizing cannabis as Schedule I, alongside heroin, based on unfounded claims of abuse potential and lack of medical use. This came despite the American Medical Association's opposition and the Shafer Commission's finding that cannabis did not threaten public safety. Ignoring these insights, President Nixon pursued a political agenda aimed at targeting certain social groups, cementing cannabis's legal woes into the present day. The classification of cannabis as Schedule I under the 1970 Controlled Substances Act stands as one of the great scientific and medical betrayals in American history. Scientific advice from the American Medical Association was ignored, and a deep study by the Shafer Commission recommended decriminalization. Yet, President Nixon rejected these findings publicly, choosing political expediency over scientific data. The true reason for maintaining cannabis as a Schedule I drug was not health, but political control. As revealed in a 1994 interview with John Ehrlichman, Nixon's former policy advisor, the aim was to target the anti-war left and Black communities by associating them with drugs and criminalizing them. Nixon was quoted saying it was about making a goddamn strong statement on marijuana, rather than addressing health concerns. The 1970 CSA enabled law enforcement to target specific communities, resulting in disproportionate arrests of Black Americans compared to white Americans, despite similar usage rates. This unjust application of drug laws created racial disparities that continue to impact our justice system today. Ultimately, the Schedule I classification was a political strategy, sacrificing scientific integrity for control with ongoing consequences. The U.S.-led war on drugs had a negative and devastating effect on people around the globe, as went the journey of cannabis prohibition. After America decided that its stance on cannabis was driven by politics rather than science, it used its global influence to export this policy worldwide. The aim? To create a unified global front in support of the U.S.-led war on drugs, pushing other countries into enforced prohibition. The primary mechanism for this control? The United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs of 1961. This treaty laid the groundwork for the current international drug laws, with the U.S. ensuring that cannabis faced the strictest regulations. Under the convention, all signatory countries were compelled to criminalize the production, trade, and possession of cannabis, save for tightly controlled medical and scientific reasons. The U.S. didn't stop at merely signing treaties. It positioned itself as the world's drug enforcer, tying foreign aid and cooperation to a nation's adherence to prohibition laws. Despite the aim of reducing drug-related crime, this policy paradoxically fueled organized crime and left justice systems worldwide struggling under the weight of low-level arrests. This was a method not of scientific consensus, but of projecting American political power on a global stage. Within this Act Zexuan, American prohibition becomes the world's law. Imagine viewing a historical diagram or a graphic of the United Nations building or the 1961 Single Convention Treaty Book as we delve into this story. After America decided its stance on cannabis was a political move rather than a scientific one, it wielded its immense influence to spread this policy worldwide. The aim was to create a global consensus to underpin the U.S. war on drugs, compelling other nations into prohibition. The keystone for this global straitjacket was the 1961 United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. This pivotal treaty laid the groundwork for contemporary international drug law, and the U.S. played a crucial role in having cannabis classified under the strictest control. The convention mandated that all signatory countries criminalize the production, trade, and possession of cannabis for anything beyond medical and scientific purposes. Cannabis was scheduled alongside heroin, with no room for countries to set their own policies. Despite the initial goal, this global enforcement inadvertently skyrocketed criminal profits and overwhelmed justice systems, entangling the entire world in America's legal framework and projecting U.S. ideology onto a global stage. Act 3. The Global Resistance and the Collapse of Consensus. The war on drugs system, once staunchly supported by the United States and international treaties, reached a pivotal breaking point in the 21st century. Nations began to prioritize public health and human rights over outdated American laws, sparking a global wave of resistance. Uruguay was the trailblazer, fully legalizing cannabis in 2013 under President José Mujica. This move was not merely liberalization, but a national security strategy to undermine criminal cartels. When challenged by the International Narcotics Control Board, Uruguay asserted that true adherence to the UN Treaty's goal of health and welfare of mankind required this change. Following suit in 2018, Canada broke ranks as the first G7 nation to legalize recreational cannabis, acknowledging its UN treaty noncompliance, but prioritizing public health and youth protection. This domino effect has seen countries like Mexico, Jamaica, Germany, and Portugal redefine drug policies, putting individual rights and health at the forefront. Globally, the paradigm has shifted. The war on drugs, once masquerading as a necessity, is revealing its true target, the freedom and dignity of people. Today, truth and self-determination push this antiquated system toward its inevitable collapse.